Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Thursday webinar. Today, we are doing a little bit of a detour, and we're going to be doing a nice Q&A with an absolute powerhouse of an individual supporting neurodivergent people, mental health, and the likes. My name's Nat. It's about time we bring on some really interesting guests just to mix things up, get a different diversity of perspective, hence why we're here. Today, what is it all about? It's about how do we create a truly safe place, a place where we all belong and feel comfortable. This brings on to my guests, Solène, but they are the founder of Be.Beyond.Borders. They are a coach, a consultative, a creative. They were named in the top 50 neurodivergent women and 133 women changing the world. Not a bad accolade to have behind your name. They lived in over 7 countries, and they bring global insights on neurodiversity, mental health, and inclusion. I think today's discussion on creating safe places will be really useful because we are going to be bringing all different perspectives from around the world. As we have such an international audience, this would be great for all of you to share best practice as we go along today. They are known for challenging norms and telling stories that matter. In this episode, we're going to be turning neurodivergence into strengths. We're going to be looking at what makes a place truly safe and inclusive. We're also going to be challenging the tension between safety and innovation and how to create real lived inclusion. Whew, a lot to cover. With that, I'm going to bring on Solène. Welcome. Woohoo!
Thank you. What an intro.
Solène, let's jump right into it. I would love to know from your own perspective, your own story. Give us a bit of intro. Bring yourself to life for us.
Yes, happy to do that. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to be here, and I'm so excited to see the chat and everyone that's joined. Looking forward to also hearing all of your perspectives. Yes, I'm Solène Anglaret. That's how you pronounce my last name. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman in her mid-30s. I have long, wavy, light brown hair. And today I'm wearing, it's a shirt that is blue and white. That's a bit of a visual description for you all. I am a consultant, a coach, and creative. So I do a whole bunch of different things. In the consulting realm, I help organizations to navigate change towards becoming more accessible and inclusive. On the coaching side, I help individuals to navigate transitions, change, big life change. And on the creative side, what don't I do at this point? I love touching lots of different things. I write books. I finished my first short film last year. It's won an award recently. I perform at the theater. I paint. So yeah, a whole bunch of different creative projects that are all about raising awareness around neurodiversity, mental health, talking about things that we don't often talk about. Luckily, we talk about them more and more. I guess that's why I'm here talking about these things. Beyond that, you might have picked up on the accent. I am French. I was born and raised in France. I have lived in 7 countries. Norway, the US, the UK, China, Australia, then back to the UK. And now I'm based in Dubai in the UAE. And I've also visited 71 countries as of last week. So yeah, I love to travel, and I worked for a while in the travel industry because before starting my own business, I worked for over a decade in the environmental sector, then travel industry, and then in diversity and inclusion in innovation across all these different countries. So yeah, a very varied profile, which begs the question, like, what is happening there? Yes, of course, ADHD. What can I say? I was diagnosed with ADHD 2 years ago. So a late diagnosis. I was 34. Now you know my age. I heard you say I look younger. Thank you so much. Before that, 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And I'm now considered in functional recovery from BPD, having gone through dialectic behavioral therapy and put in place a lot of strategies. I live with it and I embrace it. They're all facets of me. I'm excited to be here and I'm looking forward to dive into all these topics now.
Thank you for being so honest. Really a fascinating background. It made me feel that my intro didn't even nearly do you justice. You've genuinely done a little bit of everything, and maybe a chat for another day. But there is something that's so interesting. I find that a lot of people that I know that spend most of their life traveling do tend to have ADHD. There's definitely a connection there. But as I said, maybe that's for another day. We are going to be focusing on safe spaces today. Before we even dive into the questions, I would love to know what's your personal definition of what do we even mean by safe space, because it does sound like a bit of a fluffy term sometimes that people just throw around. Maybe we need to know what it is before we go further.
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's interesting because often we limit safe spaces to psychological safety. For me, I see that as one part of it. A safe space is a space of trust where everyone is comfortable to be themselves and to know that they're going to be welcome and that there's no risk or fear of judgment, rejection, exclusion, etc. That's the psychological safety element of safe spaces. What I add on to that is that for me, it goes beyond this, and it also incorporates that we want to welcome and invite different ways to contribute, different ways to think, different ways to challenge. How do we create a space where you can share your thoughts right there, right then, but you can also share your thoughts later in writing, or you can contribute through an audio recording, or so many different ways. So it's also a space that invites all of that diversity of perspectives and approaches as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. No, I think that's a perfect summary. And I think it will lead us on nicely to the first question. After doing a little bit of internet sleuthing, I found that you referred to yourself as a round shape too large to fit into any box. I will say, not looking very round, but I know what you mean. When did you realize that your neurodivergence wasn't something to fix, but something to honor? Because I imagine you said you got diagnosed quite later in life. People typically only get diagnosed if something isn't going to plan. In that short amount of time, people would be quite impressed to see how you turn something which many would perceive as a negative to something which clearly you've been able to use to your advantage.
Yeah, I have described myself that way for a long time, way before the diagnosis. It's always been that feeling that, those boxes that you need to fit in nicely, and you need to want this job and career that makes sense, and you need to get married and have a family and do all this in the right order and in the right way. I just never got it, and I could just never do it. Even the simple aspect of you have a job and there's a job description. I was always like, yeah, but that's just a guideline, right? What about if I take on this other project and I could connect with this other team and bring their insights into what I'm doing? Often I would have managers tell me, but Solène, this is not in your job description. It frustrated me so much. I was like, yeah, but it makes the company better. It makes people happier. It makes us more efficient. Who cares what's written over here? That gave me that sensation of, being this round shape that's supposed to fit in this square box. Spent so long. I'm not going to start from zero, but let's say a good 20 years. Desperately trying to fit into that. Really so hard, like masking. There's no words, but if you know it, you'll get what I'm talking about. That caused me a lot of strain in terms of mental health. It took the diagnosis to then feel validated, this big relief, the first diagnosis of BPD, and be like, okay, there is something here. Then once I got therapy and started to feel way better with my mental health, it was like, but there is still something that makes me fundamentally different. I've always felt different. I can trace it back to 6-7 years old in my own memory. And that's still there. It's because of meeting lots of other people who have ADHD. That is thanks to all of them, thanks to all those conversations where people kept saying, oh yeah, but I'm like that because ADHD, and I'm like this because ADHD. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like that as well. Maybe I have ADHD. And these people are so cool. That's the second part of your question, right? I think when you meet so many people that are doing their thing and are embracing the fact of being neurodivergent, and they are like, this is part of me. How do I use the strengths that it brings? And how do I put the systems in place to cope with the challenges that it brings as well? Because let's be realistic, both sides are prey, so that I can live my best life and make a difference and help other people and do all these things that I want to do, whatever it is that you want to do. I know the word journey sounds very cheesy and corny, but yeah, it has been with a lot of twists and turns and dips and troughs and all the words. I've never seen my neurodivergence as something to fix because I didn't even know I had neurodivergence, but I saw myself as something to fix. Now I don't. I just see myself as a human. And yes, I happen to be wired differently. And actually, there's lots of cool things that we can do with that.
Brilliant. Thank you. It's great that you do have such a positive outlook. And I think it's what you said is that I never saw it as something that was wrong because I didn't even know I had it, and coming to terms of it later in life. But by that point, you already had lots of positive role models, which I think probably leads us really nicely into my next question about bringing all this traveling together and how that might have actually informed your ability to feel safe about talking around your neurodivergence. Because I know the common thought that I hear amongst a lot of people when they hear their friends are backpacking across Asia and then they go to China, they go all over the place, is that they're trying to run away from the problem. Where from what I'm gathering from yourself is that actually it's running, I don't know, the game sounds cheesy, running towards yourself, trying to find more about you. My question is, has living across different cultures shaped your view of mental health and belonging?
It's very interesting, this point of running away, running towards. I think it's a bit of both in many ways. Definitely at the very beginning, growing up, I always had that sense of being different. And I felt like I didn't belong where I was. I grew up in a small town in Normandy, 25,000 people. I felt incredibly out of place. I was bullied heavily at school. I just thought, there's gotta be a place in this world. Surely I was just born in the wrong place. There's gotta be another place in this world where I can belong, where I can feel safe, where I can feel included, where I can be myself. It's all good. That was definitely the first impulse for me. When I went to Norway and I studied there, I did my Erasmus year there. I actually found that the schooling system, the education system, it was university at that time. The university system was way better suited to me than the French one, for example. That was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Yet, everywhere you go, you take yourself with you. I learned that as well. A lot of the challenges that I was having in France, I was having in all these other places, right? Yes, it changed a little bit depending on the environment, but still I constantly felt that need to change myself, to mount, to try to fit in, to do all these things to pass as average, normal. I'm doing massive air quotes if you're not watching because these words. But at the time, that's what I was telling myself. It wasn't until I got to Australia, that's when I started to hear about mental health. There's a day in Australia, it got started by a charity called Are You Okay Day, where basically it's like, hey, why don't you ask your colleagues, are you okay? And actually listen to the answer and actually have conversations around mental health. That's the first time that I was like, this is amazing. People talk about this, because until then, it was always taboo. Even in my family, I was brought up in the French culture, and especially like the division between your personal life and your professional life. Never talk about your personal life, especially any problems with your mental health or anything at work ever. Do not give any reason for someone to say to limit your career, to say you can't do something, to think you're weak, whatever it is, right? Completely. Even in the UK, it's not like that, right? Every country has its challenges and differences. You actually go out and socialize with your colleagues. Back then, the way I was taught is you don't even go there. You don't go for a drink. Like, you just do. You only talk about what? In Australia, that started changing. And I think it's not just a question of culture. That's what I've come to notice. It's also a question of time. Since COVID, in a way, always multiple sides to a coin, at least two. It's been good in that sense that it's opened up a lot of conversation around mental health in every country. And obviously it depends where the culture came from and how far that's gotten. But generally speaking, it's moving very fast in, I think, a positive direction of talking about it more and really owning the fact that, yes, every human being has a physical health and a mental health. That's built in. There's nothing revolutionary about that, actually. And then it's about how do we support each other and I think start the conversation and the taboos around it.
I find it really interesting how you speak about how in different cultures you felt more comfortable and arguably more safe to speak and talk about it. Because the one thing that people always ask me who are from other countries or from different nationalities while living another one is that, am I always neurodivergent? Because in some cultures, in some regions, things affect me more than others. For instance, for dyslexia, if you have dyslexia, you are always dyslexic. But in some cultures, you might find the writing style to be more suited towards how your brain naturally processes. I've heard some reports where people said, I've really struggled with the English language, despite me being English. But yet in China, because the characters are more kind of picture-based, I've actually found it easier to navigate. I'm wondering, because you've been in these different cultures, have you found that your ADHD traits have been either more obvious or more suppressed or neutral? Have you noticed any differences amongst cultures or background?
I am always neurodivergent. What changes, and it's a really nice example that you've used, is how much access needs do I have, depending on the context. But fundamentally, I'm always neurodivergent because that's a part of me. Yes, it has changed. For example, in terms of studying, right? The French university system, you have 35 hours of the specific place where I studied. Obviously, it's all different, but I went to Bordeaux and 35 hours of classes in the week. You can't have a side job or something like that. And it's very defined. These are the classes and this is what you need. And you listen and you take all the notes. And then the exam is about answering exactly what the teacher said, pretty much. When I arrived in Norway, you get to pick your classes. You maybe have 6 hours, 8 hours of classes per week. You can have a job on the side and do something else and meet different people. There's much more choice. And in the way that you study, it's like you're encouraged to read and explore yourself and then come back and think critically about, does this make sense? Does that make sense? Debate the other perspective that you don't actually hold. That was way better suited to an ADHD brain because I'm like, oh, a rabbit hole, whoa, another rabbit hole, whoa, we can debate. Whoa.
You mentioned that you are always neurodivergent, which of course you are. But I wonder, are you always ADHD? The reason I say that is because ultimately ADHD is a disorder. And it seems, as you were stating, in different scenarios, it didn't seem like it was a disorder.
I know there is disorder in the name. I think at some point the name will be edited.
Well,
I see ADHD as a brain difference. We're just wired differently. There's so much positive. There's so many strengths that come with it. I'm super creative. I'm super enthusiastic. I'm super all of these things. Like there's nothing disordered about having ADHD, in my opinion. I feel slightly different about the BPD side.
Yeah.
BPD, I have still a problem with the word disorder, but the way I would define it is that, again, this is my opinion, my lived experience. I'm not a psychiatrist, but the way I see it is like I was born with a neurodivergence that's currently being called ADHD. I evolved in a world that was neurotypical, still do. Grew up in that world not knowing who I was, not understanding why I felt so different and so at odds and so excluded and all of these things. That led me to develop strategies to cope with that. Some of them were very self-destructive, very detrimental, very dangerous. That's what led to the BPD diagnosis, borderline personality disorder, which will be things like difficulties with emotion regulation, interpersonal relationships, suicide ideation and potential attempts, etc., and ability to handle distress. That's what happened. Then obviously that, again, I don't like the word disorder personally, but that's a mental health condition, right? That's something that came next. Once that was supported, now I'm considered in functional recovery, which means I don't actually meet the criteria for BPD anymore. What's left is the ADHD because the ADHD is part of me.
Are you saying that the mental health challenges may have been a direct result of unmet needs from the ADHD? The ADHD in itself, not good nor bad, but because it wasn't understood, diagnosed, or supported, the mental health followed suit.
Yes. That and other factors, other traumas, other events that I'm not necessarily going to get into for everyone's sake. But yes, the combination of that led to severe challenges in mental health and to a mental health condition being diagnosed. That was my first entry point into the discovery around my neurodivergence. I currently have an ADHD diagnosis. I still have within myself a lot of questions about, is it ADHD? Is it ADHD and autism? Is it something else? I think once you pull one string, you start to explore. Officially, I just have the ADHD diagnosis for now.
Will have those kind of imposter syndrome, but I like the way that you said a moment ago that, I have what people are calling attention deficit hyperactivity or ADHD at this moment. The name may change, but the characteristics that you feel will always be there. No matter what kind of lens you look at, they will remain there. I would like to move it along a little bit and talk about your kind of advocacy work, because I noticed that you do try to put a very positive spin on everything, which is nice, of course. But with that, sometimes there may come a bit of friction. I do wonder, with your advocacy and inclusion, has it ever come at any personal cost to you? And did you learn anything from the kind of the journey, if that question makes sense at all?
Yeah, it's interesting. It really makes me think, because for me, any cost is worth paying for inclusion. I am prepared to literally just do anything to help create spaces where people feel included, feel that they can be themselves. And I think ultimately a lot of the time we're motivated by things that have really challenged us. And that feeling of exclusion.
Would you go to a country regardless of how inclusive they are and then try and make it inclusive?
It's so complex, right? Because inclusion has so many layers. Can you ever be fully inclusive? That was what I was going to share in this answer as well. I would say what it taught me to work in this space, that it's impossible to be fully inclusive unless everyone is included. That's a very difficult thing to do, because as soon as you create an inclusive space, someone potentially is excluded. So even when we create, say, a space for all neurodivergent people, we're all happy in there. We're like, oh my God, unmasked. Yeah, awesome. That might make other people feel excluded. To have the ambition, which is in my heart, but of included everyone around the world is a very big, tall ask. But hey ho, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm going to do to end on the cost that I've had to pay or that I'm paying, which I'm totally okay with paying, is I think I'm unemployable-ish right now in terms of having done so many different jobs and now working for myself and embracing that ADHD trait of loving to do gazillion things, only liking to do things once, because if you have to repeat, it's boring. So then I can't pay attention.
Yeah.
All the reason, like having fully embraced that is definitely made it very difficult when sometimes I think, oh, maybe I need a job. Then I look at jobs and like, I wouldn't even know what to apply for at this point. There isn't a job. Is there a Swiss Army knife job title? Because I can do that. So yeah, maybe that's the cost. But at the same time, like, I don't actually ideally want to have to ever work for anyone ever again. So maybe it's scary.
I can completely resonate with what you said there, to be honest. Maybe it is a cost, but I think your liberation and free thinking is worth employability status. I think you're actually very employable, but it's about finding the right role. That's the thing that we notice from supporting all the neurodivergent job seekers, is that most of them, if not all of them, are really qualified. But it's not the qualifications that is the barrier to employment. It's the kind of thought process that they come at problems from different angles, which employers like the sound of on paper, but in reality, it's too difficult. As you said, you don't really fit neatly into a little box. As today's session is on feeling safe, I still find it a term hard to understand, because on paper, again, we all want to work in an inclusive and an safe environment. And a company could easily say that they're safe, but what is actually safely? If I was to ask you, what does a truly safe space feel like for you? Are you able to give an answer to that? Or is that something that doesn't have a concrete answer?
Yeah, it's hard, of course, to define because it's more of a feeling. So to put words in it is taking it away from the emotional experience into a cognitive realm. But if I was to attempt it, I would say a safe space for me is a space where everyone can show up unmasked without fear of judgment or rejection. And it's based on trust, openness, and respect. What I would say is that it's not about being nicey. Sometimes people feel like, oh, a safe space is all fluffy and nice and unicorns and all that. No, because in safe spaces, actually, it's spaces where we can share challenges, we can ask any questions, we can debate points, we can resolve conflicts. Imagine when you're in a safe space, it's when, for example, you're totally open to feedback and your rejection sensitivity, if I'm talking to any ADHDers out there, is turned off for that moment, which is quite amazing. And it happens for sure, but it's not very consistent, especially in a lot of corporate environments where I've worked, where it's, oh yeah, on paper, like you said, we're saying it's a safe space, but then if you make a mistake, we're going to tell you off or something like that. Oh yeah, you can innovate, but you can't fail. Sorry to break it to you, but you can't innovate without some level of failure and pivot and all the rest of it. It's a space that welcomes, invites, acknowledges all the different ways of thinking, feeling, behaving. Ultimately, I think it's like a safe space balances the need of the collective. Say, for example, we have team norms, we have principles we live by, respect, inclusion, and the individual, like each person. How do I show up? How do I do my best work? And creating them, it's about having that conversation. And I'm just baffled how few people in companies actually sit down and have that conversation as a team. Each individual bringing their brick to the wall, saying, this is how I do my best work, this is how I communicate, this is how to best work with me, etc. And then the collective defining those team norms of how do we create a safe space? What does a safe space mean to us as a team? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? That's something I often work with companies on because it changes the dynamics so much and it makes everyone more productive, effective, and innovative and all the rest of it.
It is amazing how the answer to most questions is communication and kind of talking more openly. When you go to an organization, you'll typically find people who are in diversity and inclusion or maybe HR completely up for creating these safe spaces. But yet maybe, or maybe not so publicly, decision makers might be a bit more reserved to, in their words, cater towards everyone's whims and wishes. I know there's got to be a kind of best of both worlds. How can we put safety first alongside creative productivity? This is where I want to branch from what you said about communicating, but into maybe a bit more detail. How can we create safe spaces where both safety and innovation can thrive without compromising each other? I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, my thought is without safe spaces, innovation cannot thrive.
Yes.
One is connected to the other. And I have a study to back it up. I've come prepared. In 2012, Google launched a research project that's called Project Aristotle. They were trying to figure out why some of the teams at Google were outperforming other teams. They studied 180 teams across the company. They crunched 2 years worth of data. And they tested so many different factors. Is it the leadership style? Is it the seniority? Is it the education? What is it? None of these on their own was going to predict the team's future. Actually, they identified 5 key dynamics that are the most important to your team's success. They put them in order of the importance. The number one was psychological safety. The single most important critical factor that means that team members take risks without feeling insecure and embarrassed. That leads to innovation. That leads to better performance. Why are we pitting the two against each other? Why do we feel like we have to choose? I know a lot of questions, right, comes from leaders. How is it going to impact my bottom line? How do I get an ROI? Where is this coming from? We need to measure everything, but we can, and we have, and we do. The case is there. If people are safer, they are happier, they're more productive, they come up with better ideas, they flag risks earlier, and so therefore the company ends up performing better. Ta-da!
For companies who might be more like the bottom line's important, that's all we care about, what you're saying is they have to go in tandem together. Is there a way of bringing them along for the journey? How do we truly measure it? Have you had any kind of examples of how you measure if somewhere really is safe?
Yeah, you use the employee survey to ask questions around how safe do you feel at work? How much do you feel like you're able to share your ideas, to ask questions, to raise challenges? That's how you can measure it. You can see the change year on year, and you can also compare it with the company's performance. You can have it at team level. You need to have enough people. Yeah, we don't want to single anyone out. But at team level, you can look at, okay, what's the performance of each team and how inclusive is the team environment based on each individual's feedback put together of how included they feel. So yeah, you can 100% measure it.
You are smashing these questions, by the way. They're not easy. Haven't stumped it yet, but they're really great. It makes me think of happiness index. They have different ways of measuring how successful a country is, where most countries will typically go via GDP, where others will look at more factors. Maybe that is where organizations have to go. I want to really understand from a more kind of tangible perspective, how do we actually do this? Because mostly it comes down to policies. Is that where you think real cultural shift happens? Or is it more grassroots? I'm imagining it's probably a blend, but where would you start in terms of creating a culture either from scratch or from readjusting a company culture that might have steered off track a little?
It is a blend. You're absolutely right. Policy does play a part because policy helps us to state our intent, our commitment, but then we need to follow it with action. It's an ongoing pursuit. A lot of people ask, how do I just get an inclusive culture like now, like this?
Yeah.
It's not like, I know people don't like this answer, but it's true. You constantly have to review and you constantly have to work on it. You have to foster the culture of inclusion. It's not something you can tick the box like, oh, we now have a culture of inclusion. Box tick. No, it's an ongoing work. And because cultures themselves are moving, evolving, being shaped by all the people that are part of them. They're not static. That's a very important point. I think another important point to consider is that it's a job for all of us. Yes, the leaders play a huge role because we are evolving in hierarchical organizations and societies. For the most part, perhaps their voice has extra gravitas, their energy. They have the opportunity to lead by example. At the same time, every one of us plays a part in shaping the culture. How we show up, what's our energy, what do we bring in that moment? You can see that. Just reflect on maybe, I don't know, in a team that you were part of, everyone seemed pretty happy on board with the vision, like ready to rock and roll, do the work. And one person is like angry or sad for whatever reason, how that one energy can shift the entire atmosphere. We all have a part to play. It can be a mixture of things. You can think of really small things. I was leading a team in Australia and I started introducing this get to know you question at the start of every meeting. And I rotated who was picking a question. Could be anything. It's very small, but it helps people to get to know each other. It helps people to find commonality. And that starts creating more of a safe space and more open communication. It can be a little bit bigger things, like you can do a half day every quarter, for example, where you put a team activity together to open dialogue. Often we think about things like, I don't know, go-karting or partying or something. I don't know. Lots of money, lots of trouble. I'm like, pause. You can do something really creative. I once took one of my teams to, it was really funny. It was like paint each other. You're facing each other and you paint each other Picasso style and someone is taking you through the whole process and then you reveal to each other. And it was in a local studio in town. And it was just wonderful. Again, you're bringing people together. You're creating that dialogue. You're also acting on the creativity / innovation aspect as well. So you can be really creative and have fun with it. It can be also things like what behaviors are we encouraging? And what behaviors are we not tolerating? That's a really important point in terms of setting up a safe space, but also fostering that culture of inclusion. Maybe we're introducing core value awards when people do something great towards inclusion, towards accessibility. Then on the flip side, how do we deal with behaviors or with decisions that go against? And how do we make it clear where the boundaries are, where the safe space lies, and what is not safe in our cultures? How do we hold each other accountable in it? So yeah, that's a bunch of ideas.
Yeah, there's so much to pull apart on that. First thing, I got the visual image of you're only as strong as your weakest link. Essentially, you've got to build the whole team up. A lot of these kind of fun activities, maybe sometimes the top leadership aren't always involved in because they deem it not a useful part of their time. These are all really great examples. But if I can, I would like to bring it back to you. Maybe if you have some kind of personal examples from your own history, and if there ever been instances where you were included on paper, but maybe reality, that wasn't the case. Because I know lots of organizations where people publicly say, hey, we're included, we support neurodivergent people, but in reality, it's not really the case. and they don't always know how to bring it up. They don't feel psychologically safe to call out the elephant in the room and say, actually, I don't feel included, even though you say I am.
Yeah, I've definitely been there multiple times. It's led me to leave jobs, do something else. A practical example, I worked in a equality, diversity, and inclusion team, which is so ironic, yeah? As part of the interview process, I mentioned in my presentation, because I was going to work in supporting disabled and neurodivergent innovators with their business projects and ideas and things like that. I mentioned, because I thought it's a strength, yeah, to have lived experience. I mentioned that I didn't say any diagnosis. I didn't feel quite safe to do that just yet, but I mentioned I have lived experience, yes. After starting the role, I was never asked, do you need any support? Is there any adjustments that we can put in place to help you or anything? No one ever mentioned it ever again, even though in the interview I was told, it's really great that you have lived experience. And it baffled me. And the whole environment, like the manager had their favorites, the whole team was struggling. No one was able to speak up. When people spoke up, there were negative consequences. So lots of things remained unsaid. It was just not a good environment for anybody, let alone neurodivergent people. Someone else joined the team, another ADHDer, and they asked me, what adjustments do you have? How does it work? I was like, girl, just been surviving for a year because like I love the job, I love the work externally, but internally I don't feel included. Like the things that we preach, we don't actually do. It was really hard to cope with that cognitive dissonance. I ended up leaving because I was moving to Dubai. I would have left anyway, to be honest. I give it a year and then I'm out. What kept me going was really focusing on who I was serving, because the job had externally, like I said, such a big purpose that really helped me to cope and be resilient to everything else going on internally. Because I was like, that's not why I'm here. But yeah, it still was very difficult and definitely took a toll on my mental health. And because I like to always push the boundary, I thought about this idea of, do I still feel excluded with all of the work that I've done and that I'm doing in terms of embracing my full self and all these things and creating inclusion around me? I was like, yeah, I do actually. That's interesting, because I was like, but why? I think even exclusion, you can reframe it in a positive. That was mind blowing for me in reflecting on this before the webinar, because sometimes when we are excluded, quote unquote, meaning like you're not suffering from it, we are maybe even choosing to take a step back. It can be a strength because it can offer us a different vantage point. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Actually, yes, I often now exclude myself, quote unquote, inverted commas, because I'm not suffering from it. I'm choosing to step back, to observe, to see what is happening in the environment, to come up with creative ideas, to go into a different field and bring something from over here, to help people that might also be excluded, because then I can see them and I can be like, oh, hey, how do I broaden the circle here?
I would imagine, I thought you were going to say, felt excluded. I decided to do something about it, maybe more practically, but you're like, actually, I left. You were leaving anyway, but you said you were going to. I thought, okay, question can't really be answered. But it seems to me that maybe you can't always change the system, but you can change how you personally see it. I suppose what changed isn't any kind of practical things that you were able to do for a company that wasn't really willing to be more open, but you were able to save yourself from it having negative repercussions on your own mental health.
Yeah, and not just that. I took a couple of people with me. Like coached different people to recognize their strengths and how they were underutilized as well. Look, I wish I could change every system. I'm not going to name names, but like government. So giant elephant. Sometimes you can't change the system. You can change things for people around you. And throughout my time there, I'd like to think, I hope my colleagues would say, that I created a pocket of inclusion. I created moments. I organized all these meetings and these informal coffee catch-ups and all these different things, and had one-to-ones with people to help them with their jobs, to help them feel more comfortable, to connect people together, even with other teams and things. I did what I could within the environment. Then also externally, like helping the people receiving the funding to start businesses, grow businesses. There was a lot of positive, and I think that's what I chose to look at. That's the big takeaway and the big change is in the past, because there's been other experiences. I would have thought there's something wrong with me. I need to change myself. I need to stick to this job. I need to just, whereas at that moment in my career, 10 years after these moments, I was like, there's some things I'm not going to be able to change. What can I change? What can I influence? What is my circle of influence? Let's focus on that and let's see all of these pockets of positive elements and small steps that I'm making. I was also very involved in the disability network, the ERG, Employee Resource Group, doing lots of events, lots of awareness, so many things. What can I actually do? How can I influence this without getting completely lost and overwhelmed by the things? There are other jobs, there are other companies. I'm not saying throw the towel and leave straight away necessarily. Make sure to keep yourself safe financially, emotionally, all these things. I'm just saying there are lots of companies, there are lots of jobs, there are lots of countries. Keep looking if you're not feeling like where you are is positive for you, for your mental health, for your ambition, for who you are. There are other places.
It seems like a really healthy way of dealing with it. In basics, change what you are able to change, but accept what you are not able to change and be able to move on. See, the world is not doing great at the moment, and people like us, we want to change it. We want to change, but if you put all that on your shoulders, no wonder why we burn out so easy. Being able to say, take one thing, doesn't have to be a big thing, but putting your mark on it. And if your spirit, which is clearly valuable to many people, isn't being appreciated in this instance, moving to another area isn't a failure. I think what I've learned from you during this chat is reframing, if anything, can create a safe space, being able to put yourself back in the driving seat. Well, we've got one more question, and I'm going to end with a very uplifting one where you can get creative and take us in any direction you so wish. It's that if you could redesign one system through a neurodivergent lens, what would it look like? With all these organizations, which we said may or may not be inclusive, if you're the boss in charge, what do you think would be the key strategy, system, policy that you might put in place, which might open people up to feel more psychologically safe?
I would create a world without borders. I would completely remove nations and presidents and kings and all that. I would have one planet, one humanity. Let's think about this whole thing holistically together. How can we all survive and thrive with the resources we have for the rest of times rather than destroy everything in the way that we're doing now? That would be the system. I would go global. I would not even think about it twice. And I would base the whole society around the safe space and around celebrating both the differences that make us unique and the similarities that make us human. That would be my tagline.
That is a very good answer. Again, I gave you kind of like director level power, but you went right up to world dictator level, but in the best possible way. No, I completely agree. It raises so many questions what a world without borders would look like. It's funny you mentioned that because last night I went to the premiere of this new John Lennon movie, Obsessed with the Beatles. Anyway, there was this big board and it says, what do you want to change in this world? The sticky note that I wrote was, get rid of borders. There's definitely some synergy going on there. Helen says, love it, Solène. Yeah, reach for the stars are nice. All constructs after all, absolutely feet. Helen says, the job hunting process itself is so excluding. The searching, the difficult application types, the interviews, etc. We can't get past the barriers. You're absolutely right.
I bounce on that. If you're in the UK, there is a company called Even Break. They're a job board for disabled and neurodivergent people. They offer free coaching for candidates. That might be helpful.
Nice. It's definitely a site that I've looked at many a times and spoken with the CEO. I've not used the services personally, but I can definitely vouch for the staff that work there. It all seemed really lovely. A lot of people just honestly resonate with a lot of things you're saying and saying, you know what, the system's flawed, but having this kind of more positive approach and outlook has been really valuable. I honestly feel that we could probably talk till the cows come home because that's the beauty of ADHD. You never know where you're going to end up, even if you start in one solid location. But I guess I just want to say thank you so much for being part of today. It's been an absolute privilege to speak with you, and it's been so lovely and uplifting.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone in the chat as well. I was trying to look at the chat as I was talking.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it was a lot going on, but it was amazing to see all the reactions. And yeah, happy to connect with anyone after this as well. If you have any questions or if I can help in any way, I'll put my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect, reach out.
Just have a look at this quick comment here from Helen, which I think is lovely. This has really improved my mood today to be in a room with similar people. Thanks so much, guys. I think absolutely beautiful. And we've got lots of lovely feedback coming in. Thank you, everyone, so much. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great one. My mood feels improved as well.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really a pleasure. I really appreciate it. And everyone, remember that you are amazing just as you are. Take care.
Nice.